Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. AngloGold Ashanti recently announced that it had more than trebled free cash flow generation in the first half of the year to $108 million. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Sashnee.
Can you give us the highlights of the company's half-year results as presented this week?
Yeah, mining companies have been concentrating on getting free cash flow, and you can see that AngloGold Ashanti has really looked at those metrics and they've scored big on the actual free cash flow. It's unfettered cash flow that is not committed to any project, not committed to any part of the business. So I think for months now, most gold mining companies have seen that as their main target and big priority after safety. Also using some of that to cut debt. But of course, in the background, there's also the old question of production. And those old-fashioned things are still hard to attain, particularly if there's legislative framework, which makes it pretty difficult. So we saw them being punished, their share being punished for production, which didn't reach the sort of level that people were expecting, because they are looking for a 10% increase target in South Africa. But the state of play of the legislative framework is such that it's very difficult for these companies to do that, because there's so many safety audits. I think they had 77 safety audits, and I think all of them will acknowledge that if there is a fatality, then it's serious. You've got to have that closure of the mine. But I think 6 of the 77 were fatalities. So these audits are just coming in quickly and furiously, and I see that in the platinum mines in Rustenburg, a civic organization has said, you are threatening our economy. The way you're doing this is not correct, because it's tantamount to stopping a massive freeway for you. So you stop the whole freeway from here to Joburg to Pretoria to Vereeniging because there's an accident on one off-ramp, and then not letting that freeway continue for days, and sometimes more than many days. And it's actually bad for the South African economy at the moment, the way it's being tackled. Obviously, one death is too many, but sometimes it's not even a fatality that leads to these audits, and it's knocking our economy at a time when we shouldn't allow that to happen, because we know that the world is watching us at the moment. Our credit rating is crucial. Hopefully something can be done about it.
The company's current strategy has been designed to cope with all market conditions. Can you tell us about the strategy going forward?
Yeah, so that was the question put by Mining Weekly online. You have pulled in your horns very severely, because that was the state of the market. There was angst in the gold mining industry. The price of the commodity was down. You had to really look at those financial metrics very, very strongly. But now that you're coming into a sweeter spot, in fact, one of the sweetest spots they've had for a long time, and you can see it from their market capitalizations, the shares have rocketed overall. They go up and down, but more like in a sawtooth. But at one stage they were very badly down. Now they've lifted out of those doldrums. Does it require a new strategy? Do we need to get back to making sure that you don't prune the tree to an extent where no more fruit grows? They believe they've designed a strategy for all seasons, good and bad. So they intend on continuing with what they call, a very close look at all the financial metrics, but also keeping optionality. And the options are around their brownfields growth, where they don't really have to spend that much money. Obviously the big projects are out of the question at the moment, but when something is close to the mine and looks like a possibility, they are keen to start probably devoting some funds to that. And then in the longer term, they see a massive transformation coming with their exploration in Colombia, where the center of gravity in the long term could actually move to Colombia from that point of view of this company, AngloGold Ashanti. which has a deep South African history. And we did see improvement from the production out of the South African mines, but there could be a lot more if there weren't these legislative constraints.
It was revealed at the half-year results that the company was developing a machine to improve the economics of gold mining in South Africa.
Yeah, I think Mining Weekly in particular, we've watched this technology development, the South African technology, as they call it, raise boring, very different. We've been watching it for many years now, and I think we're the only ones that still ask that same question every time. And it always comes up with a positive response. There was a little hiccup, but we see now that that they've gone to the Mark IV level, progressing that technology, trying to improve it all the time. And it's a question of being able to get continuous mining. Again, a legislative framework that could be constraining our economy at a time where we need to be able to export a lot, and where gold, presents a particularly golden opportunity at the moment. They're trying to persuade the government that in the areas where they use this technology, the business case for it would be greatly enhanced if they could work round the clock. Rock around the clock, as that music used to go. They want 24/7, 365. That could really boost the economics of this new technology, which takes out the gold and only the gold, which is very, very important, because most of the time you go under there, you blast the place to a shaking, shivering mass. That unsettles the rock formation. That can result in fatalities. Then you've got to close the mine. Whereas if you use this technology, Mother Nature isn't aware that you've taken her gold. And before she knows what's going on, you've replaced it with a backfill, which is very, very hard backfill that will keep the particular rock formation in steady state. There won't be any movement and shaking that adds to the seismicity, that creates vulnerability for people working in there. And I think that they need to get to forces within the government that can recognize that we're the only country that only really works like 260 days a year in our mines, and the economics will change radically if we can work 365. I'm not saying we're going to have to work on all the days, but in principle, 24/7. Now, that has been a long battle because the unions don't want to agree to that sort of work. But if a machine is doing the job, there are far fewer people involved, and one would imagine that there's a good labour case to present at a time when South Africa's economy needs this. So hopefully we will see some sort of ears being opened, and if they can get the go-ahead for continuous operation, as they call it, this particular mode of cutting the rock and bringing out the gold would probably increase its effectiveness, because they would get to know the technology much more and probably put in more and more tweaking to it that would really make it work to a point where a lot of companies in South Africa could use this. They call it the South African technology because they're prepared to share it. They're prepared to share it because in all things that add to safety, the mines are prepared to share. If they can save a life, they don't want to put any financial strain on that. So this could help other groups as well if they get it right.
AngloGold Ashanti's CEO said that illegal miners were slowing the company's feasibility work for modernization of the Obuasi gold mine in Ghana. Can you tell us
this is the stunning thing, because Venkat, as we call him, the CEO, he sees Ghana as his first home in Africa, because that's where he came from India, and he started working to try and assist that operation, which was in terrible trouble because it had hedged the wrong way. Now, hedging means you sell gold forward at a certain price, and you've got to get that price right. If you get it wrong, it destroys everything, and they got it wrong. So, he had to come in and try and sort this out. So he's got a very soft spot for Ghana. And you could see this week he's absolutely nonplussed, because Ghana, in his mind, has always been associated with good law and order. And he cannot, for the life of him, understand what has happened to that law and order. Because he's got a mine there that he actually had to cease operations in part of it, because he said to the government, we want to rebuild this mine, we want to modernize this mine, we want to bring out a new blueprint, put a new investment into it, because it's running at a loss and we have to change it. And there was an agreement on that. But since then, the occupation of illegal miners has been mind-boggling. And it reached a point where the company said, we know that artisanal miners, need to mine as well, so you can take a big chunk of our concession and the miners can have that. These artisanal miners can have that, thinking, well, that'll satisfy them. It didn't. Now you've got a situation where you have no right to get private sector security. You've got to use the security of the state. So you call the security of the state and say, we have this occupation of illegal miners. And they then come around there, but they put a lock on the gate, as it were. The illegal miners are still there. So it's tantamount to you in your home finding a whole lot of people in the spare room. You phone the security and say, can you get these people out of the spare room? The security come and they guard your gate while these guys are still in there. Nobody's taking them out. And there's an election coming up. So who says they're going to take them out before election, which is November? Already there are serious signs of pollution of the mine, abuse of facilities, water pollution. And these miners come equipped these days, eh? They've got equipment and they might even look at yours as well. And they just continue and no one takes them out. So this whole feasibility study is just grinding to a halt. And you can see that nobody knows what's going to happen. And I think there is an international arbitration, which they've introduced. And probably that's also slowing things up, because they say, oh, well, it's gone to arbitration, we better not do anything. And it's just frustratingly slow, as Venkat said.
Thank you for speaking with us, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Sashnee.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news and analysis on South Africa's mining industry.